Hey guys, so this week we're going to go into a different method of solving quadratics. And again, we know quadratics are all about the x squared. We know that we've been using the quadratic formula, which you guys recognize off to the right here. We know that we have an a equal to invisible 1. We've got a b equal to 3. And a c equal to negative 10. And we can always plug in to the equation off to the right. Now, we are not going to do that. I'm actually going to show you a shortcut. Unfortunately, this shortcut only works when the numbers are easy. Okay, so the quadratic formula, this thing right over here, works for everything. Okay, what I'm going to show you here is a shortcut that works for pretty much all rational numbers for them and other things, but this is how we're going to do it. So, back in the old days, we used to factor. So again, make sure it's set equal to 0. And then instead of doing ABC, what we'll do is the old, I think double bubble is what most teachers are calling it. The only weird thing is now it's set equal to 0. So you have to kind of carry that through. Okay, so again, I know Ms. Schulte and myself, we teach drag the first sign over here. All right. And this sign tells us that the signs are different. So if that's a plus, this one must be a minus. And of course, it's always XX. Now some of you guys are going, oh yeah, I remember this stuff. Okay. And then the rest was all the factors of 10. Started with 1 and 10, and then you go down your list 2 and 5, 3, 4, 5, and then it reverses. So basically that's it. Okay. So we're looking for two numbers that are going to give us a 3. And again, that sign tells you the difference. So obviously 2 and 5. And that's our factoring. Okay? So step 1, factor first. Factor first. This week we're going to work on double bubble and dot. So this is the only type of factoring you're going to see. Okay? So this is where we interrupt. And we do what we call a special set of notes, because now we're going to introduce something called the zero product rule. Now, most of you guys are not going to remember this, and you really don't care, and I understand that, but I'm just going to show you what it's all about. You'll notice how we have it set equal to 0 up here. And there's a rule that says if you take two numbers, A and B, just making them up, and set it equal to 0, what does this number or this number have to be in order to get it to equal 0? And we all know, oh, that means A could be equal to 0, because 0 times anything, right, is 0. Or B could be 0. So as long as I get A and B equal to 0, I win. Now, again, most of you guys don't care about this, but if you take a look back up at our problem over here, we've really got two things being multiplied times each other to equal 0. So here's the rule. And again, you guys don't care about anything I just said, but here's what you got to do. You take what's in the first bubble and you say, I want that to be equal to 0. And you solve. Just do your regular solving. There's one answer. X has to be equal to 2. Or the other one has to be equal to 0. So you take what's in the bubble over there and you say, that has to be equal to 0. And again, draw the wall, do your solving. And believe it or not, those are your two answers. Most books and college level stuff put it in these funky set notations. Remember, it's not a point. These are the two answers. If you just leave it like this, it's fine. But just so you understand, it's not a point. It's a set or a group of answers. So real quick, if you can factor first, set each one equal to 0 and solve, you've got your two answers. Okay? Okay, so down below what I'm going to do is actually do the quadratic formula with the same question, just to prove to you guys real fast, and you don't have to do any work obviously, that this is the exact same thing. So real fast. So I get x equals opposite b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4. The a is invisible 1. The c is negative 10 all over 2a. And that's that. You guys know we got to do the box first. So x equals negative 3 plus or minus. Yeah, so it's 49 all over 2. Off to the side, I check square root of 49. Of course, it's perfect because that's kind of how these problems always work out. Factoring problems usually work out to be rationals. Okay, so we get our 7 and we plug back into our split since it's a whole number. So I got negative 3 plus 7 over 2. And I got negative 3 minus 7 over 2. Do a little math. I get 2 for an answer here. And I get negative 5 for an answer here. And again, if you take a look at these two answers, exactly the same thing as those two answers. So it is simply a different method. Guys, please remember the quadratic formula works for everything. So you can always use this big formula. Okay, it always works. For those of us who are decent at factoring, this is a quick shortcut, and I'll show you how fast it is. All right, so let's take a look at question number 2. We'll bring this over here. Again, we can always use quadratic formula. We know we've got an A, a B, and a C. Okay, so we could always do this big formula. But if we're good at factoring, watch what happens. Make sure it's set equal to 0. Do our double bubble. So I'm going to do 2 parentheses. Again, it's set equal to 0. Make sure you remember that. Again, depending on how your teacher taught you, you're going to do the factoring. Again, my class always does this. This tells me that they are the same, so that's a minus. This must be a minus. And again, if you're Mr. Rooney's class, you guys had a different way, but you guys were all pretty good at factoring. The one thing we always did was take all the factors of 21. Start with 1 and just work your way down. No 2, 3 and 7, 4, 5, 6. Nope, not looking good. So it's just these two. Okay, we know that we need two numbers that is going to give us the middle number, 10. So that's obviously going to be 3 and 7, and that takes care of that. That's quick. Most of you guys are good at factoring. If not, you can always use quadratic formula, but this is the quick way. Now, from here, we use the zero product rule, which means nothing except for take each bubble and set it equal to 0. So without doing too much, just basically, hey, x minus 3 equals 0. I solve, plus 3 plus 3. And you guys are starting to figure out there's a trick to this. Hey, it's always the opposite sign, which you're right. We could show you that shortcut later. So here's one answer real fast. X minus 7 equals 0. Draw a line. And again, x equals positive 7. So two answers this time are both positive. 1, 3, 1, 7. If we did the quadratic form, we would end up with the exact same answers. But you can see how quick this is if you're good at factoring. Okay, I'll do another example with you guys in a sec. All right, so real fast, bring this over here. And we'll do one more time. Again, quadratic formula, I would have a 1. Oops, sorry guys. I would have a 1, a negative 1, invisible. I'm going to put it in here just to make sure we're solid. And a negative 20 for my A, B, and C, if I want to use the quadratic formula. But let's see if we can factor this real fast. Okay, so we'll double bubble. Equal to 0. Drag the negative sign here. Yeah, let me put my x's in first. Most of you guys don't do that. This tells me they are different, so if that's negative, this has to be positive, and that takes care of that. Next, let's do all my factors of 20, starting with 1. 1 and 20, 2 and 10. There is no 3, 4 and 5, and then they start reversing, so we're done. We need two numbers that are going to equal to negative 1. Don't forget, that's a negative 1. So the only thing that's going to get me close to negative 1 is going to be the 4 and the 5. So that takes care of that. Okay? So if you can factor fast, factor first, and then set equal to 0 second. Factor first, set equal to 0 second. Okay? X plus 4 equals 0. And most of you guys are starting to figure out it's always the opposite sign. So there's one answer. And then set this equal to 0. And solve. Pretty straight. Yeah, there's my two answers. And again, if I use the quadratic formula, I get the exact same answers. Okay, I'm going to show you one more, dots, the dots factoring, which you guys were it was really easy now that we've done perfect squares. So we're going to work on double bubble factoring and this last one, which is called dots, or difference of two squares. All right, so let me slide this whole thing up, give us some space. Okay, so the last problem that we're going to do down here is a little different looking. You guys can see that there's not three terms. There's only an A. There is no B. B would be 0. And C, obviously, is 144. Now, that's not what's important. What's important is 144 and the x squared are perfect squares. You guys hopefully remember the old perfect squares. Square root of 144, some of you guys remember, hopefully, is 12. And this is called a dots because it's difference of two square roots, or some teachers call them perfect squares. In either case, this was real easy to factor. It was another double bubble, so you always are going to double bubble it. It's always XX, right? You take the square root of that one, and you take the square root of this one. Square root of 144 was 12. And you just put them in there. Remember, 1 plus, 1 minus, and the order doesn't matter. Set it equal to 0. So, the dots factor, and I know you guys remember now, you're like, oh yeah, this was easy, is just square rooting them and putting them in the second slot. So, that's basically all you're doing. And then again, set them equal to 0. So factor first, set each one equal to 0 second. And this is really obvious. But again, minus 12, minus 12. So this one does it be a minus 12. Oops, sorry. And this one, again, set it equal to 0. That's the rule. And solve. Plus 12, plus 12. X equals positive 12. And you're going to see dots always turn out to be plus or minus, same answer. Okay, that's it. I'll show you real fast. I'm just going to write this one down. So let's say you had x squared minus, what's an easy one you guys know? 16, right? Equals 0. There's only two things, so it's not going to be the regular stuff. It's dots. Most of you guys already know what's the square root of 16, right? There's the 4 and the 4. We know that's going to be x and x, right? So that's the easy one. 1 plus, 1 minus. Factor it. Set them equals 0. X plus 4 equals 0. This one ends up being minus 4. I'm being lazy now. Set this one equal to 0. And this one equals plus 4. Oh, sorry about that, you guys. And there's two answers. Okay? So this week we're going to be working solving quadratics, not with the quadratic formula, but with factoring. This worksheet's pretty easy. You got two double bubbles, and you have two dots. Remember, factor first, set them equal to 0, and solve second. Okay?